I want to give you a sense of some of the pictures that were me draw the pictures I did of the garden tour, to give you a sense of what it was like to be on the tour, and also how I went about drawing the pictures. This isn't going to be everything, just the pictures, which you might be able to see. I've changed the name so that it says for DT, Daily Telegraph. These are the pictures that I sent to the Daily Telegraph to include in the feature. So there are lots more photos. These are the ones I sent to the Telegraph because I thought they might like these pictures. So let me see if I can talk you through them. What you're seeing now is my friend Simon in a garden that he knows very well in Stoke Abbott in quite near Bedminster. And what have I done there? And he's showing some of these people who are from America, a gardening writer, British woman, living in, I think, south of Spain. Sophy Roberts, the travel writer and photographer, who was also on the tour with me, and one of the guest speakers here in the yellow. So the garden was in its real glory in May. And it may well have been around here that Simon said something like, "You should have been here last week when the such and such was in flower," because that was a line that many people said when we first walked into their garden. And at this moment, we're just walking into this garden and Simon is showing us around. Just another couple of things that leap out to me, because I did make pictures out of this. Not only do I like the fact that there's a configuration of human beings and they're staring in certain directions, and that's something that I've always been quite interested in because of performance and dramatic art and the way in which people confer importance on something by the way that they gaze at it, the way that they stand around in a circle or not. Imagine that everyone was not looking at Simon here. That would suggest that he wasn't being very interesting, but they are in fact paying attention to him. So I'm always interested in people's body language and the shapes and the way in which they're moving. But also, because I was drawing pictures, I'm very, very excited by the orange on this rucksack and the yellow on that sleeve, because they really leap out in a drawing which is so substantially green. I got very excited about this. Now, moving on. Simon's partner in this enterprise is the novelist Jason Goodwin, and I happened to get a picture of the two of them later on, walking through a garden at an extraordinarily splendid private garden in what I think was a rectory, and it's been turned into the most extraordinary combination of lawns and passageways and sort of microwave fields. That pathway that they're walking along is also to be seen here. I think these are holm wood. It's very, very tough. I think it was called ironwood at one stage. The wood in these trees is so hard that I think it has that quality. Now, walking up this path, we then turned left, and the man who owns the rectory and has made this amazing garden showed us this large area of very bright red tulips, which he'd planted not in vast numbers, they've spread, but they have this extraordinary impact. And as we were walking up the hill, I turned back and looked back down, and I happened to see the three Americans who were on the tour, the three women basically from the Rockies and from California. So bear in mind that these women were coming on a garden tour in Dorset, which has a very different climate from where they are back home, but they were learning and very excited to learn about attitudes towards gardening, not so much like what plant should I put where, but how do I create shapes? How do I create light? What do I do with color? How can I experiment and be bold? So those were some pictures from Netherbury. I have another picture of Simon and Jason somewhere together and discussing how the tour was going at that point. Let's have a look. Here they are. I think this was one of the first days, maybe even the first day. And they were talking about how the tour was going, what's working well, where are we going next. I don't know, I wasn't really eavesdropping, but I remember that they were looking quite sort of thoughtful about the whole tour. Now, if I could zoom in here, which I don't know if I can, but let's see. Over here is Sophy Roberts again. Sophy was writing a story as I was writing for the Telegraph and making drawings and providing photographs. Sophy was taking pictures herself for a story that she was writing in the Financial Times. And Sophy's story actually came out before mine. And it was great to be able to talk to Sophy and discuss what it's like to write a thing like this and compare notes. And there was no rivalry. Certainly, I didn't notice any. In fact, I was really excited to know that Sophy has done something like this with an artist who I really admire called Myra Kalman. Maybe I'll come back to Myra Kalman at some point. That was Sophy taking pictures. I got a lot of pictures of Sophy taking pictures. There's Sophy taking pictures again with Jason in the background. And one of the American women who you have already glimpsed. This is later in the week, and unfortunately, in my opinion, it was unfortunate because it was such a beautiful garden, but it was a really rainy day, so the brightness of the colours didn't particularly leap out at Chilcombe. I've, with regret, decided not to include my drawings of Chilcombe because I just don't think that they were bright enough. This was another moment at Chilcombe. There's my dog Peanut. As people were preparing to walk down, and you can probably just about imagine how amazing this view is on a better day. Let's see what's happening over there. You see, on a better day, that distant landscape would have been amazing. I mean, it was kind of amazing, but it was just a bit spoiled by the wet. And another effect of the wet was that people might possibly have slipped. And there's my beloved Schnauzer Peanut. This was also at Chilcombe. And Tanya Compton was there to explain lots of very interesting and important things about the gardens at Chilcombe on that day. So the garden tour didn't have the same guest speakers and so on every day, but on that day at Chilcombe, Tanya Compton was there. And we learned a lot from her. One other thing I just want to tell you about is this garden at Chilcombe was created by an artist called John Hubbard, who had a huge influence on Simon, my friend Simon. And actually, Simon said that when he went into the garden at Chilcombe, he said, "What have I been doing with my life?" And John Hubbard basically inspired him to become a gardener himself and to leave magazine journalism. And now Simon has his own extraordinarily beautiful garden. But the point I really want to emphasize is that in this room here, there is a gallery of John Hubbard's artwork. He is no longer with us. And it's certainly worth a visit for that. But also, fascinatingly, over here, in this kind of barn or outhouse, I went in and I recognized art that I had seen on Instagram by someone whose pictures of flower-related art, gardens and flowers and still lives of flowers, I greatly admire on Instagram. And it kind of seems like a coincidence. Of course, not a coincidence. It was Flora Roberts, Sophy Roberts' sister, who makes pictures of flowers. I don't think I've got a photograph here of Flora's work. Let's just have a bit more colour because I've been showing you Chilcombe, which was in a bit of a grey day. 2 days earlier, we went to visit a garden that's been very, very quickly turned into something that looks like it's been there for absolutely decades. It's incredibly beautiful and bright. Look at the colour of those sweet peas. Are they sweet peas? No, they're not sweet peas. They're, shows how much I still have to learn about gardening. It's not sweet peas. I've just completely forgotten the name at the moment. Is it lupins? Can't remember. And there again is, let's have a look. There is a really beautiful coloured, brightly coloured rucksack, another one that I'll be coming back to. There's Sophy with her notebook, not taking photographs at this moment, but there is the camera with which she took pictures for the FT. I just think the colours on this are so exhilarating, actually. Just amazing. If you look at the deep red of this bit, and then the pale pink up here, and then this rather surprising yellow effect over here, and then the really dark, intense of this red and this pale, and the dark plus white. That just knocked me out. There's something about colour that is so, I don't know if I can really put it into words. It's just, it does its own thing as colour. That's the same flower bed with my friend Simon talking to Sophie. Look at, isn't that amazing, that flower bed? And in that flower bed, or perhaps in the next flower bed over here, I think there was an iris that I just thought was amazing. Look at that orange. If you know much about colour theory, and I don't know that much, but I know a certain amount, there are some very harmonious mixtures, and one of them is green and orange and violet. And those three colours together are just very, very satisfying and sort of zingy, technical term. So there we are. That's the zingy colours. That over there is Non Morris, the gardening writer, who was also on the tour. I showed you at the beginning, a picture from this, arriving in this garden with Simon talking. And you see over here the wisteria. For no particular reason, I took a selfie through the wisteria. I suppose I'd rather look at the wisteria than look at myself. I think I was just going to send that to my daughter, but in the end, I did happen to send it to the Daily Telegraph as one of many pictures, and they included it in my feature. But I suppose that's how it works with stories and writing features. You don't necessarily intend something to work out that way, but it did work out that way. So I sent them that photo and they used it. Sometimes, as you've seen so far, I would be taking just straightforward still images of normal photo shape. And as you may have seen already, because I've shared it somewhere or other, I would often put the photos together in a kind of collage, creating a composite picture, which I could then draw, and the composite would never be quite like the photograph because it's a bit boring to just copy the photograph. But one of the drawings that I did make was based on this photo, very closely based on that photo, I should think. I don't think I mucked around much with this. It wasn't a collage, it was nothing like that. But what I do sometimes do to make it more interesting to myself, and so that I'm not just copying something, which is a bit boring, frankly, to do. And if it's boring to do, it's probably boring to look at. What I sometimes do when I'm really grabbed by something and I want to turn a photo into a drawing, well, for a start, I don't want it to be particularly photographic because what's the point? The photo is already beautiful. And these irises are undoubtedly extraordinarily beautiful and delicate and so on. So what I tend to do is I simply take off my glasses, which makes everything a little bit blurry. And if I do the drawing, working from the photo, which I can't see very well, and transmitting it into a drawing on Procreate, then that's quite satisfying to me because it's clearly not very accurate. And it's much more gestural and expressive than a careful, rather tight, anxious and deliberate photographic copy would be. So these irises here are from the gardens of John and Jennie Makepeace. John Makepeace is well known for his furniture, and they garden separately, which is really interesting because although they're doing it collaboratively, his part of the garden is quite distinct from Jenny's part of the garden. So just to give a bit of an example, I don't know the story of this piece of sculpture, but I do know there's John in his tremendously pinging orange trousers. I love it, the way they leap at. There's my dog Peanut again. I don't know the full story about the sculpture, but this notion of shapes and furniture making and structures and physics and geometry and those sorts of things seem to me to be very John Makepeace. You just go here. I'm quite pleased to catch a reflection of them speaking in the structure itself. which is obviously designed to reflect. Then I also got a photograph of John Makepeace speaking, into, so clearly not recognisable. So again, I'm trying to sort of break the sense of something being deeply recognisable and making it into something that makes you have to think, I suppose. So there's John Makepeace's garden, quite formal, quite geometric, quite shaped. A bit more of that here. And there's this rather wonderful, there's my dog Peanut again. There's this rather wonderful bridge across, pointlessly going across a pond, but interestingly going across the pond into a room where you can just sit. It's just a summer house. It's nothing, it's not very big. It's just a little space where you can sit inside and look out at this pond and the bridge. So that was nice. I enjoyed that. There's this wonderful orange rucksack again. There's the view crossing the bridge into this very small, cozy room for sitting and looking at the pond. And I think you're probably getting a sense of how John Makepeace's garden feels, quite geometric. And this here is Jenny Makepeace talking to us. There's Jason over here. Jenny's talking to us about their two gardens and their two different approaches. And we are at this moment in John's garden. But then later on, we went into her part of the garden, which included much more abundant and interesting kind of flowers here and there, and all over the place, different shapes and different things. And I was quite keen. This is one of many pictures that I transformed, if that's not too grand a word, into a collage so that I could draw from it. You might recognize this later. But there's Jenny Makepeace. There's Peanut, my dog. There's Jason Goodwin. And I was really pleased with this idea that I'm watching someone who's looking at something. This is one of our friends from America who joined the trip. And I could tell you her name, but I didn't ask, so I'm not going to tell you her name. And then there is a couple just hastening. Well, they're not. I think they were maybe hastening. I can't quite remember. But you just about see behind this thing that they're holding hands. And I'll show you a picture later, which should explain why I'm drawing attention to that fact. So I've given you some sense of the garden tour. That's not everything. There's one other picture I suppose I should show you, which is in this case, rather than doing lots of photos and turning them into a composite collage, in this case, I used the thing on the iPhone that allows you to take a panoramic photo. I was quite pleased with that. I wanted to get a sense of the sheer scale and scope of this particular garden with its tower at the back. And you recognise that tremendous rucksack again. And great thing about these photos, these panoramic photos, what you do is you start taking a photograph of this bit and then you turn your camera and you're gradually going over here. So actually this part of the photograph was taken maybe a second or two after this part of the photo. So if someone's very fast, they could start over here and run over here and they could be in two parts of the photo at once. I don't think anyone was doing that on this occasion. But it's a panoramic photo, gives you quite a good view of that bit over there, while also giving you the sweep of, look, there's Jason and Simon looking at the wide range of the garden. And that was our host at that particular point. Now, if I stop sharing for a second, I can now show you some of the illustrations. Okay, so here we are again in the Makepeace garden. And what I just want to demonstrate is the difference between an iPhone panoramic photo and me making a collage. This particular picture is a collage of several pictures of the house. You can just about see that I've stitched them together. There's different colouring here. Which can go in very closely on the. You can just about see here the sky actually has a different colour. A little corner of wrongly coloured sky. And down here we have the irises that I showed you earlier. This is the very geometric kind of shaped part of John Makepeace's garden, where he's actually cut a table. Remember I said he makes furniture? He's cut one of these hedges to look like a table from outside the garden. And this bit, because of the collage not having any, it didn't all fit the collage. So I had to just colour in some grass here, just roughly the same colour as grass over there. And this same over here, there were too many people standing around. I didn't want all that many people, so I just coloured over some of them. You can just about see that there were people here, but I coloured over them to fill in the garden shape of it. And there's Jason talking to Jenny. So this is a collage. That's just one of several collages, just to show that it's possible to do it without making, without taking a panoramic photo. Now, where am I next? Here's another collage. This one was made out of, really, again, a lot of pictures. And what I think is worth drawing your attention to, well, you can probably just about see, I hope, that the sky needed to be filled in with painting because I didn't have enough sky. There was no, I didn't have any of the stairs, so I just coloured in the stairs from over here. Let's see if I can do that again. Okay, so over here, I really did have a bit of stair on the photograph collage, but the collage didn't run over here. So I just borrowed this kind of colour and filled in order to make the collage photo at least look broadly like the same thing. You can see the join here between photos. You can see the join there if you look very closely. And actually this collage was something that the Telegraph used in the print edition. You can see the join there. So there's no attempt to make it perfect. I'm not trying to do Photoshop perfection. That's absolutely not the point. And what I am trying to do is show that there are joins, and this is a bit wonky because mostly these things are just for my own benefit to draw from. But I like them also in their own right as a photo collage. Quite like that. So yes, the Telegraph used that because I shared it with them. But another thing that's maybe worth pointing out here is that I was, all the time I was doing this, I was posting pictures to Instagram. And maybe slightly to my own regret now, I remember being told frequently that Instagram tends to work better with portrait format drawings that are upright, not landscape, which are sideways. And so sorry, didn't mean to do that. So what I did was use this collage to create a drawing which was upright. So it's actually, it's not the same rich width as this. So you see the photo collage now. Here's the thing I did in the intro. I like it. I like the vividness. I like the color. I like the sketchiness. The total lack of any attempt to make it look graphic or even precise. You know, they're very blurry, those bits. They're gestural. They're meant to be a sense of some kind of feeling and not completeness. That is not a very accurate tree. None of it's exactly accurate. It's an attempt to convey the feeling of being in the garden at the old rectory. But why am I telling you this? Oh yeah, so I did do this as an upright portrait format drawing. I kind of now slightly regret that I didn't draw it as widescreen like that one, because when I did do a couple of other wide format pictures, I just love them being wide. Here's one of the place where we actually were staying. This is not a secret garden. This is, as it were, just the garden at Symonsbury Manor where we were put up for the whole week. There's Non Morris, who I've drawn your attention to previously, and I really like the fact that she's wearing this colour which stands out against the green somewhat. There she is again in the same colours. This is Simon showing us something about his apple trees. He's got lots and lots of different apple trees producing lots of different apples. You may recognise now this backpack, the orange that I like so much. And this is a very rudimentary sketch of Sophy Roberts, probably asking Simon a question and taking notes for her piece in the Financial Times. One of the pictures that I didn't include in the collection that I'm actually making available to people is this one, which is Symmetry Manor from another angle. I really like that, actually. I'm going to keep it for myself, but I'm not including it. This one here, next one, is a bench in the garden by a stream with an art studio here. And this is from the garden that I showed you earlier with the panoramic photo and the sort of turrety castle place in the background. I really liked the fact that they had this art studio for the mother of the family. And she had a stream next to it. I just thought it was a really lovely spot. But as I said, that one's not included in what I'm making available. You saw earlier the red field of tulips with the 3 American visitors. So I was quite pleased to include them, broadly speaking, in there. And I told you about the irises that I drew with my glasses, or to be too precise. I didn't do the whole everything, as imprecisely as all of that. I kept the top blurry and imprecise because I don't particularly want to draw the eye there. I use a few little black lines to give things some shape. And the iris, which I was most interested in, I gave a little bit more line for the detail. What I'm really trying to do is just give a sense of the feeling of looking at those things and how much I just feel a very strong yearning to draw it. This was Isabel Bannerman, who went into an enormous room, a sort of shed, full of tools, way more than this begins to convey. But I didn't take photographs of her until she was on the way out, so this is just a tiny little speck of those. And I think it's quite interesting because it really shows that this was a secret garden tour with people who are showing us around the back, the kind of the workings of their garden. And now finally, coming back to one that I showed you a photograph of earlier. Do you remember maybe that I mentioned there was a couple hastening past a kind of folded down parasol thing? Well, I got rid of the parasol and now I just show you them hastening past. There's a sketchy version of Jason and Jenny Makepeace and Peanut. There is the woman who I photographed taking a photograph. I think that it's fair to say that the wildness of my pen strokes, at least it's intended, so whether it does or not, it's intended to give a sense of the more wild, abandoned busyness of Jenny's garden. And I've also kicked in this brilliant orange rucksack and the other colourful rucksack that I mentioned to you earlier. And again, keeping the background fairly blurry because I just like it to be a bit imprecise, as must be clear by now. Now, one other thing that I haven't mentioned much, I talked about the way that I feel so strongly about colour when I was showing you a photograph earlier of possibly lupins and the extraordinary effect of different colours against each other, especially warms and cold colours. So I suppose I ought to draw attention, for those who haven't already noticed, that I often in this series have used warm colours underneath other colours. So here you can just about see that the sky started off quite pink and I drew blue on top of it. And the idea of that, without covering over the pink, because then it would be pointless, but to leave a bit of pink showing to give a sense of the warmth of that day. So that's why I do a lot of underpainting in pink and red colours. But not this, not much warm underpainting here. Well, I don't know what to say. I don't always think about it out loud like that. On the day that we went to Chilcombe and I said that it was quite rainy, this is a drawing which I'm not including in the ones that I'm releasing. There's Sophy Roberts taking photographs. I didn't include Jason and I didn't include the American woman who I've allowed you a glimpse of several times. And I really like it, but I think I forced it with the pink. It wasn't really a warm day. I mean, it was kind of because it was made, but it was drizzly, and I'm not happy enough with that picture, although I do like the sense of Sophie taking photos. I'm going to stop now. Thank you for watching.